Hello, everyone. I'm Andy, coming to you from the United Kingdom.
And making my way through the dog days of summer in Toronto, I'm your other host, Scott.
Very good to see you again, Scott. This is the T and Timbits podcast, global perspectives on business development to help you prosper. How's the summer been treating you so far, Scott?
It's been very good. The weather has been summery, which we had wildfires last summer in Canada, like
Okay.
across the board, and we actually had to cancel outdoor activities because of all the smoke. Now, listen, there have still been some devastating fires this year. The town of Jasper in Alberta has burnt to the ground. It's been absolutely terrible. The That's been an isolated thing though, so it's been good to be able to get out and enjoy all of our usual routines and activities, and I hope that it just stays around a little bit longer this year.
We've certainly had an odd summer. Well, I suppose a very British summer this year. It's been wet and rainy and cold, and everyone's complaining, "Oh, it's really awful summer because it's too wet and rainy." And then the next day it will be hot and sunny, and everyone will complain that it's too hot and too sunny. And it's just the British way. It's fantastic.
Is it British to talk about the weather? Because it's very Canadian.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we like to talk about the weather and we like to join cues.
Yeah. I'll send you a picture. We've had a deluge of rain this year as well. Like, same thing. Like, it just comes down hard or not at all. I'll send you some interesting pictures of the streets of Toronto.
Thank you very much. We can also post them on our socials, I guess. Very exciting stories of the weather in Canada and in the UK. But I think this week we're going to be continuing our episodes on entrepreneurship and startups and being a success. But we're going to focus this week on the imposter syndrome, which is something that affects many people. I'm not sure that I'm the right person to be able to talk about it. Who am I to have an opinion on these sort of things? But we'll give it a go anyway. However, before we get to that, do you have a story for us, Scott?
I do. As I'm, if I didn't do some of this other business mentoring, I probably wouldn't have a much smaller story bank. So I was working with some other entrepreneurs recently, and they produce these business plans, and then they get other business leaders to review them and comment and whatnot. And so one particular person, and this is a really extreme example, but I thought it'd be great to sort of illustrate a point. So I get this. I get the business name, I get the business owner's name, their contact information, and then I get their business plan. And so I read just the tombstone information. Who are you? What's your name? Whatever. I Googled them. I looked them up. I'm like, okay, I've got some context in my head. I opened the business plan, and I was like, oh, they must have attached the wrong business plan to this business name and this person. And then I looked a little deeper at the business plan. I'm like, no, it's the same person. And then and so I was like, okay, well, maybe they just sort of submitted through the legal entity that they had established, and they're starting a new business. And because honestly, the existing business and the business plan were using related technologies, but were completely different businesses, completely different business models, completely different strategies. It's just, you can use a drone. They were using drones. You can use a drone to survey different things, or you can use it to do light shows in the sky. And so that's essentially the contrast. And then I got on the call, and I was like, I just need some clarification. Like, you're doing, and it all fell into place. I'm like, oh, I get what's happened here is that you have an understanding of this technology. You want to apply it to a different industry. And then by the end of the call, we had pivoted again to what I think is probably a better place. But I said, I can tell a lot about the technology and different ways you can apply it. Instead of applying it to the place that you currently are excited about, what about having a service business or position yourself as a consultant to anybody that has this technology or wants to use it in their industry? And then that allows you to be an expert in the technology, how to use it, how to set it up, how to maintain it, what accessories or instruments you need on it, and then being able to adapt that to, the industry that your customer is in. And it just like, they were like, holy crap. That's exactly what I want to do. So anyway, the interesting story, don't be so schizophrenic about some of these things. Be really intentional. Get some, on the point that we made in our last episode. Don't just sit in your desk and write business plans. Socialize it, which this person had done. Like obviously by talking to me and getting involved in this program, was doing all the right things. But I thought it was just an interesting story worth sharing there.
No, definitely, and I think that ties in quite a lot with what we're talking about anyway. Now is the whole being prepared to evolve, being prepared to
Yes.
open up, listen to advice, take that advice, and apply it as applicable to your business. Not maybe necessarily changing the business all the time, but getting that feedback from an outside perspective, seeking that feedback from an outside perspective, and then considering how that can be applied, and using that to hopefully to the advantage of the business overall.
Indeed.
But today, we're going to be talking about the imposter syndrome, which obviously is that persistent feeling of being a fraud, despite all of the evidence to the contrary. But I think we all can suffer from it from time to time, and whatever it is that we're doing. And it can be simple things like putting out a social media post. Why should I be recording a social media post on sales success? Who am I to do that? And I think we both probably felt it before we started doing this podcast as well. Who are we to talk about business development? Why should we be talking about it? And yet it's something we've been doing our whole lives.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on how, what should people get from this discussion?
So just, I hope a little bit of confidence and reflection about overcoming some of those hurdles that are in front of them, those sort of mental blocks that do hold you back from those, from doing some good, fun things that you're probably pretty passionate or excited to pursue. So it's just a confidence booster, I hope.
Yeah. But what would you say were common signs of imposter syndrome, so people can identify that they are suffering from it? Because sometimes people that don't know that they are.
Well, I'll reiterate some of the points that you just made, and I would say that in my very early entrepreneurial journey personally, like it probably, we've had our own business for over 20 years. It's only been in the last probably 5 or 6 years that we've really sort of gained the confidence to put ourselves out there more intentionally, more loudly. And you could argue that, like, well, that's because now you have 15 years of experience and you have something to talk about, but that's not it at all.
Mm-hmm.
It was certainly like, okay, fine. I have the confidence because I've seen the same themes come up time and time again, and they're as old as time, and therefore they're unsolvable, or they're so recurring. And my experience is something I can draw from to tell the story. But it wouldn't have been any different if I had started a podcast 15 years ago, or the content marketing that we do, or some of the mentoring or whatnot. So it is definitely that sense that, well, there are so many people out there that are saying the same thing, or that are better educated, or are more established than I, and who am I to, enter that, even enter that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that is, really what, imposter syndrome is all about for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's exactly it. It's, I think is that sort of self-doubt and, attributing your success to luck, things like that and stuff. And, just thinking along those lines is it's very typical, creative people, entrepreneurs. It's very, very common for people to suffer it. And I think as well that sometimes when people get that feeling and they become aware that they've got this imposter syndrome, that they often think that they're alone in that feeling as well, and that it's just them who's experiencing this, which then feeds that fire. But I think in order to overcome it, I mean, what would you say are some clever things that can be done to do that? And from my perspective, just to
carry on
a little bit out there, I think it really starts with embracing your achievements and recognizing and regularly sort of taking stock of your achievements, celebrating the small wins, keeping a journal of the milestones and challenges that you've overcome, because by doing that can really boost your confidence and give you that continued reflection, which then reduces the possibility of you falling into that trap of imposter syndrome when you have to go and do something. Someone invites you to go and do a speech, you get invited as a guest on a podcast, someone asks you to make a social media video with them or do a LinkedIn live. People feel more confident about it because they know themselves. They go, oh yeah, actually I have achieved some stuff, I have done some good things, I have done the right thing. And it allows people to sort of shift their mindset in a way.
Right. I would agree with that for sure. I think that it's just recognizing that you have had whatever in your life. If it goes back to school days or community development or whatever, family life, there are successes that we've all been able to achieve, and they transfer. There's an accomplishment there. You may not know the intricacies of heart surgery, but you might know how to schedule really well, or rally people on a team. You might need to go learn some hard skills if you want to go into heart surgery. But my point is that you'll have a lot more strength and confidence if you can rely on some of those other successes that you just talked about. I also think it is about remembering that the audience that you have is unique to you.
Yes, very true.
And so, yeah, sure, there are lots of other people that talk about business development, being entrepreneurs, sales, and so on and so forth.
For sure.
But I've never talked to anybody else about it like the way I talk to you about it, Andy. And so, if all else, I'm just here to help you in your career, because I don't think anybody else is listening to our podcast. The audience that surrounds you is surrounding you for a reason. They're at the very least friends, colleagues, and they will appreciate that you've thought about, you've aggregated, you've distilled and reorganized some of those thoughts and communicated to them, and that therefore is coming to them from a trusted source. So it may not be terribly unique, but it is coming to you and your audience, and you're adding value there. And I can't remember who said there's no such thing as a brand new idea, but just because somebody else has said it or has a stronger backing in it does not mean you are therefore not qualified.
No, exactly. It's really about reframing that mindset, isn't it? It's that positive self-talk, the just reminding yourself that it's not a case of I'm not good enough, but instead say to yourself, oh God, now I've put myself in a position. I'm constantly improving. There you go.
Right. Yeah.
So, but shifting that, I'm not good enough. Well, maybe you're not where you think you should be, but the fact is you are constantly improving. And there's also, and we touched on it earlier on in some of our other episodes about mindfulness, meditation, being grounded, being focused. I think that's important. But there's one other thing that you just made me think of when you said that that we don't talk, we don't necessarily talk to other people about business development in the same way we talk to each other about it, is that seek a mentor. Having a mentor who's faced similar challenges, and you can learn from their experiences and their insights, can also give you that confidence and also help you to to feel that you're not alone and that you are you are knowledgeable in your own area, because if you join entrepreneur groups, mastermind groups, or you have a mentor, you're going to experience other people who've had similar challenges to you but don't have the same experiences of you, and that you can also then provide value to them to help them, and that will boost your confidence immensely and take away the chances of you having imposter syndrome.
I like that. It goes back to the conversation in our last episode as well, just kind of validating your ideas and talking to people about them to get that feedback. And you might find out that that's been so overdone, it's not worth it. But it'll just sort of show you where you can also find your lane, and where you do have a unique perspective that's worth sharing, and at least for a particular audience. I guess the final thing I would say is, who cares? So what? There's a certain detachment that you can benefit from if you're like, you know what, I there might be other people saying that, but I'm passionate about this. I want to talk about it, so I'm gonna, or I'm gonna pursue this. And you might be pursuing something that somebody else has done, but you may have more energy for it, and that person may be willing to pass the torch, or that person maybe just riding on coat. Who knows? So sometimes you just need to let it happen, and you should try to set aside those hesitations and uncertainties.
Absolutely. I just want to say one more thing before we conclude this episode, that if you are leading a team of people, it's also very important, and this touches on our previous series in July, that there's an importance in creating a supportive work culture and a working environment. Because if you can celebrate the little wins, and you can embrace the successes that the team are having, this will reduce your team members' fear and anxiety and their own potential imposter syndrome, and it will allow them to feel more confident to go out there and represent your company and your brand in a more meaningful and more balanced way, that gives them and everyone else a happier work-life balance as well, because they'll be mentally more confident with work, more comfortable with talking about things, and more comfortable with being able to switch off and relax.
You just hit on something that's, again, probably its own episode, but I was coming at this topic kind of from the entrepreneur perspective. That's our theme of the month, is like, I've got this idea, I want to do this thing, but who am I to bring it forward, or something like that. But I've seen in the business development world, people come on, they get interviewed, and they convince that they have these selling skills and capabilities, but then they just cannot properly embrace the brand that they have been hired to represent. And I think a lot of that is a certain amount of imposter syndrome. Well, holy moly, like, I squeaked through, I found this job, or I can do what I can do, and I'm excited to enter this market, but I actually didn't go to engineering school, or didn't go to business school, and I don't know it as well as all the other people that are that I work with, and that I've seen holds back business development professionals, who just kind of feel like they're disingenuously representing what it is that they sell.
That's right. So do you feel that we've concluded this topic in a good way?
I think we've come up with some good points, and hopefully given some people some things to think about to improve their confidence around those moments when they just don't feel like they should stand where they are.
Yeah. Well, that's very good. But if you're listening and you want to get in touch, give us some feedback, ask any further questions, then please feel free to reach out on our social media, where you'll find us on most of the platforms. But also, you can go to tandtimbits.com, where you'll find connections to all of those social medias and our contact information, and ways to sign up and listen to future and past episodes of the podcast.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you very much, Scott.